You are now watching the True Mets Talk podcast live stream. We will be going live shortly. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe to the channel.
Shallow right field, stumbling start for Stewart. It's a deep left field by Alvarez. He's homered in 4 straight games for the second time in he's homered in
4. Yo, what is up, everybody? It's your boy CP, and welcome back to the True Mets Talk podcast. Going live here, our third ever live on this podcast, and I am joined here by none other than Talking Mets with Rob. Rob, I appreciate it. You are live and in the flesh in Port St. Lucie at Mets Spring Training. I can see it on your face, the sunburn. You're having a great time. I know you are. How are you doing today? Thank you for joining me.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, a lot of sunburn. It's very painful. I'm not gonna lie. But it's great to be in Port St. Lucie. Smell of the grass, crack of the bat, pop of the glove. Good times, man. I unfortunately have to go back home tomorrow, but it's a good time and great to be with you, buddy.
Yeah, absolutely. Great to be here. Great that we have Mets baseball back, live action. We're going to be talking about a little bit of an informal conversation. Obviously, all of these live streams that we do, we have topics. We talk about X, Y, Z, but we don't have any topics today. We're going to be having an informal conversation, talking a little bit about some trends that we've been seeing in the first 2 live action games, about some of the guys that have been impressing us, some things that we like that we've been seeing, some things that we didn't like. So, like I said, as always, chat, especially in this live stream. Make sure you all are telling us who you have been like. Who do you like to see? Who have you been seeing in these first 2 games, and what do you think that this team and these guys can start improving on here as we progress in this spring training? Obviously, only 2 games into this whole thing. A lot of rust needs to be shaken out of these players as we continue on with the spring training. But as always, make sure you're subscribing to the channel, hitting that thumbs up for me, and making sure you're following us both. Link's going to be in the description down below. And I'm getting very bad glare on my glasses, so I'm going to take these off. But nonetheless, want to shout out some people in the chat. Always supporting the podcast. Darren saying LGM. I definitely appreciate it. We got Mason in the chat saying LFGM. We got the Back It Up Binge podcast, CP and Rob, 2 of the best. I appreciate it. And we got David as well here in the chat. Continue to drop your comments. Drop your opinions. Like I said, we're going to be giving our opinions here. And I first wanted to start to talk off about the 2 starting pitchers that we've seen across the first 2 days here in Tylor Megill and Jose Butto. 2 guys that probably are in direct competition with each other. Add on to the fact Joey Lucchesi, who are vying for that last rotation spot. So, Rob, I know you didn't go to today's game. I know you went to yesterday's game, and that's where you got that lovely sunburn. But what did you think of both of these guys' starts, especially the live action of Tylor Megill, who obviously you can see here went 2 innings pitched, allowed 2 hits, 3 Ks, 1 earned run. He did hit a batter with that slider, and we'll talk about that slider because he was definitely mislocating with it across those 2 innings and 39 pitches to go along with it. How do you analyze and judge Tylor Megill's first start of spring training?
From the right field area where I was sitting on the berm, it was kind of hard to tell what pitches wasn't working for him. Everything looks the same when you're further away from the mound. But, he looked a little erratic, which, again, the first start, I'm not going to go crazy and say, oh, he's a bust or anything like that. Right. But he did look a little flustered. Like, when he lost the confidence right away in a couple of his pitches, he was lost. And you hope that mentally he doesn't take that to his next start and then getting further and further closer to the season. That's when you really have to worry about Tylor Megill, because I think it's more mental than it is stuff, because we know how good his stuff can be. And I feel like that, first start, live action, it's really hard to just say, he just doesn't have it. But yeah, his slider was actually there. When I looked at the replay today, actually a little bit, his slider wasn't there. I don't know how many times he threw that new pitch that I guess is the Americanized ghost fork that he's throwing. But it's a new pitch as well. I maybe he threw it a couple of times, but he threw 39 pitches. He didn't look great, hitting the batter. I don't know if they called it a pass ball or wild pitches, but a lot of balls in the dirt. I'm not going to take a lot out of it. His next start, he'll probably go up to like around 60 pitches. That's when you really get an idea when he gets to 3, maybe 4 innings, where you'll see if he just had a bad game, stretching himself out. But overall, it wasn't, you heard a lot of moans and groans in the crowd with Tyler McGill in the first 2 innings that he had. So that's what, with the weird offseason the Mets had. And then the fans saw that yesterday, especially what was it, 7-0 in the first couple of innings. It kind of like puts a little damper on the opening day of spring training. But overall, you know what? He came out healthy, and I think that's what we need to ask for in game 1 that he pitched.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, he was mislocating on that slider, but it is something to be said for these pitchers are out there and they're throwing multiple pitches, right, to live batters for the first time in live game action. And that's something that Ron Darling said on the broadcast to Gary. He said back in the days when he pitched, obviously they had a strict pitch count and they'd only be throwing fastballs out there in their first outing. But Tyler McGill is trying to work on everything. Like I said, I'm not sure the final pitch count on that new and improved pitch that we've been hearing about all off season, but definitely that slider didn't look up to par, and that's only going to continue to get better. A lot of people, like I said, X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, there were some overreactions, and that is something to be said where the Mets have this type of offseason. Obviously, we'll get into the quote that David Stearns had mentioned today on the broadcast with Gary when he was asked about this offseason, and we'll get into that here in just a second. But these guys are undergoing a little bit of a transition. They are going and shaking off this rust, and a lot of people are also accepting of that fact. So, and that goes for everybody, the pitchers, the hitters. I mean, we saw some pretty horrendous swings yesterday and today as well, but these guys are shaking off that rust because against live pitching that is not against your own teammates, it's a completely different ball game. And I think that's what a lot of fans fail to realize this early on in the season. But like I said, it's really great that we have live action spring training baseball back. And like I said, I believe someone here is asking you how Port St. Lucie, how is it down there? David is asking you, what's the atmosphere like down there? Minus the kid that's screaming, "Let's go Mets" every 10 seconds on the broadcast. Can you hear that kid around you?
Yeah, I did a lot. It was actually a talk of the game, especially where I was with the 7 line. It was actually really funny. But yeah, I tell you right now, if you haven't been down to Port St. Lucie, it is a totally different city than when I first went here in 2018. Like there was nothing around. There was a Wendy's, a McDonald's, and a CVS. Now there's apartment complexes, a ton of houses, a ton of traffic, and a ton of restaurants now. And the facilities are completely different since Cohen took over. He revamped the entire backfields. The facilities are better. The fan experience is better. And I think if you want to go, it's not cheap. I tell you that. Going to Port St. Lucie now is expensive right now because, especially during right around the spring training opener, it's definitely more expensive now. I mean, it can run you over $1,000, maybe more, because of the fact that that's where they make most of their business around spring training time. So if it's worth the money just to experience it, you're going to most likely get nice weather. This is actually the coolest it's been since I've been here, been going to spring training for the last, 5-6 years. It was in the low 70s, mid 70s. Last year it was in the high 90s. So I would experience it. If I tell everybody, go at least one time and experience it. You get to be really close to the players, especially in the backfield that open up from 9 to 11, 11:30. Go there. You can get right in front of a player. Sometimes they come speak to you, but the prospects, those are the ones that are really, really close to you most of the time. Probably not like the top 5 prospects, but definitely guys that you'll heard of, like the A-Rams of the world. Alex Ramirez, who is a guy that loves to practice. Like he's there before games early, after games early. I've seen him a lot over the years as a little kid, and now as a guy that's building up into something, as I know we'll talk about later. But definitely try it because I think it's a great experience if you're a person that really wants to get up close and personal with the players.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that I've been wanting to do for quite some time as well. The atmosphere just looks absolutely electric. You have the guys like Joe DeMayo and Connor Rogers doing their pod out there, getting people in on the mic as well, as a little bit of like a sort of an impromptu sort of question asking segment. And it's awesome to hear. It's awesome to follow up on YouTube, but it'd be even better to get down there. So I definitely have plans to get down there next season, and we got to get something going together because it's something that it's a once in a lifetime experience. And like you said, Steve Cohen has been putting money into this organization, and that trickles down to those facilities down there as well, not just up in Queens. So a lot of people do miss out on that fact as well. But moving forward, obviously the Mets dropping that first game 5-10 to the Cardinals, and they come back around today and beat the Houston Astros by a score of 3-1. Jose Butto, the next guy that's vying for that fifth rotation spot, took the mound and looked pretty impressive himself as well. I like to see these type of performances out of Tyler McGill. And something that we didn't mention about Tyler McGill, even though he wasn't able to locate with his slider, it did seem like he was pretty confident. He was getting the fastball over where he wanted it to be. And we saw that translate to those 3 strikeouts that he got. So it's good to see that of Tyler McGill. Definitely some rust to shake off there. But Jose Butto came out swinging from the gates. Obviously, he himself had 2 innings pitched here. He amassed no earned runs, no walks, 1 strikeout over 39 pitches as well. And these 39 pitch counts, these 39 pitches that these 2 pitchers threw, a little bit more than what the Mets would have wanted them to throw. But then again, I guess this, Jeremy Hefner and Carlos Mendoza are giving them a little bit larger release. And like we were saying before we went live here, their next start around probably going to be upwards of 60 pitches, trying to ramp up for opening day. But in terms of these 2 guys here, I know we didn't get to see a little bit of Jose Butto. You kind of got to watch an inning out of him. I watched an inning out of him. I was busy doing something before the game started. But between these 2 guys, like your early intuition, who would you want to prioritize in giving this spot to? And I'm not just talking about the performances that we see here. I'm talking about just in general with what we've seen last season out of Jose Butto. Very impressive in his tenure with the Mets, his shortened stint after coming up in the tail half of the season. And then Tyler McGill, and what we know from him, a guy who's benefited from injuries and being that opening day starter for the last 2 years when he really should not have been. What do you make of this competition? And we don't even have Joey Lucchesi up here. So who are you prioritizing right now on February 25th as we speak? What is your gut feeling?
I think it has to be McGill. In my opinion, it's McGill. I think when it comes to like the organization, because it's a new regime, it's a new manager, it's a whole new front office basically that is dealing with who's going to make this final decision. Because I don't think it's just based on who has the best spring. I mean, I would like to have a competition where whoever has the best spring should get that 5th spot or that spot in the rotation that fills in for Senga. But I think it's going to be McGill only because they see the potential on a major league mound. Jose Butto comes up later in the year. There's not a lot of pressure on him. Half the time the Mets were not in anything. So he was just pitching just to pitch. And, with Lucchesi, with the injuries and coming back, he has some good stuff, but I don't know if the Mets want that funky type of motion or the way he pitches in the rotation. I think they probably see him as a long man in the bullpen. That I think that's where, like, Lucchesi's probably 3rd out of these 3 guys. I think Tyler McGill, because of his track record and what he did over the last 2 seasons, last year wasn't good, but it was really in a bad spot last year, I felt, because of the fact that I just didn't think that, getting the opening nod on opening day, the day of, and say, hey, Tyler, Verlander's not pitching today. Get ready. He never prepared for that start. A couple of years ago when DeGrom was hurt, he was ready for that start. He knew he was going to be the opening day starter about a couple of weeks prior to opening day. I think it was in 2022. So to me, I think that because of the fact that, they call him the big drip, right? He's a guy that I think that he has that toughness. And I do think that if he harnesses his pitches and that new pitch and figures out that slider, he throws 95, 96. I don't think he's going to throw that 98, 99 that he did early on in 2022 that got him injured later in the year, I do think that Tyler McGill probably has the best chance. But if they're really talking about competition like Stearns and Mendoza is talking about all around the diamond, including the pitchers, I think the best man should win. I don't care who it is. If you have the best, overall stats, I guess, and just look good, I think you should get the start. But I think Tyler McGill got the nod at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. And like I said, that's what I kind of like am leaning towards as well with Tyler McGill, because I just like the teams can say that there's like true competition with these guys in spring training, but is there really? Are they really going to prioritize a Jose Butto with that lack of sample size over a guy like Tyler McGill? That's where I kind of get iffy on that, and I'm just not sure if that is a real thing that the Mets are evaluating and looking at. But you never know. That would make the most sense, because this rotation spot really is just up for grabs. Like, you're going to tell me that there's a huge difference between a Tyler McGill and a Jose Butto? To be honest with you, with the way Tyler McGill has looked, I wouldn't think so. I like Tyler McGill's stuff. He just hasn't been able to figure it out in the major leagues, right? Yeah. He has all the tools and all the makings. This is the same thing we say about Drew Smith. Has the tools, has the velo, 95, 96, 97 miles per hour. The slider for Tyler McGill has been great, especially in 2022. Batters weren't even batting 100. They're batting .061 on his slider in 2022, and that skyrocketed up to 264 in 2023. But that pitch has been impressive before. So it's like, it's a big wild card of what we're going to get from Tyler McGill. So I really hope that this is an active competition, not just a cookie cutter. Okay, let's quote unquote see what Jose Butto has, but knowing in the back of their heads that they're going to go with Tyler McGill. I hope it's not that case. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and you know what? It's the Stearns effect, right? We don't know what Stearns values. Does he value overall numbers at spring training? Does he value how the pitcher just looked on the mound, like the poise? Even if he is getting beat up, does he look like a guy that's flustered on the mound? We don't know, except what we've seen with Stearns with the Brewers. But, seeing it firsthand, we just don't really know what Stearns values. He talks about defense, right? Run prevention when it comes to the defensive purposes. And you can see, especially in the outfield, that he's worried about run prevention in the outfield than total offense, to be honest with you, when it comes to Bader and who knows about Marte. But yeah, I think when it comes to the pitching, I don't know what he values. Like, you're not filling Senga's spot and putting them in there to be the ace, either one of these guys, or Casey. So, who's going to be the open day starter? Who knows? I mean, it could be McGill, it could be Quintana, who knows? But
who would you do? Who would you, on that topic, who would you put out there opening day then? I would put Luis Severino out there.
I would love it.
Just personally speaking.
I think Severino does have that potential, and I think he has that fire. I wouldn't throw him to the Wolves right away yet. I don't trust him yet, even though I think he's going to have a little above average season. I would rather go with the veteran of Jose Quintana. Get him going quickly, because he's a guy that could pitch as a top line starting pitcher. If you look at his numbers over the years, he's been very solid. And I think that going with the veteran who is not going to get flustered, who is not going to, there'll be nerves, as all the players talk about, but he's a veteran guy that, with the 40,000+ at Citi Field against the Brewers, he is not going to, get flustered by the moment. And I think he's just going to go out there and pitch like the veteran he is. And I think this opening day means a lot more to the fan base, more than it does probably the overall team, because the Mets have the best record in baseball on opening day. So the win really doesn't really determine how good the season is going to be. But I think to start off opening day, get a solid victory, or whoever pitches well, and just look like a solid team, I think is everything to this fan base. And I know it's only one of 162, but I think this fan base needs a little bit of a confidence booster because of the offseason and because of the disaster of last year and the disaster of September and the wild card in 2022. They need that little pick me up, because it's been a rough offseason. And as content creators, we know it hasn't been easy for us. And it can only imagine being a fan that's like, why didn't we sign Martinez? Why didn't we see Montgomery or this guy or that guy? And I think they need that. And the Mets can have a bad season if they win opening day. We don't know. But we need something to pick us back up. We need that confidence back. And with a middle of the road National League where the Mets all really are in the middle, I think that, a good month can turn a fan base into a fan base ready to boo, than a fan base showing up and starting to cheer that team on, because they did it in 2019 when they were going through their run in August. So I think the fan base just needs a little pick me up.
And speaking of that pick me up, I'm gonna give this quote here from David Stearns. We're gonna talk about that here in just a second, but I want the chat to let us know, who would you all have? Let us know in the chat, who would you all have to start opening day in lieu of this Kodai Senga injury? Who would you have starting opening day? Severino, Quintana, or somebody else? I want everyone's opinion in the chat, and I want to shout out the chat. Make sure you all are hitting that thumbs up, hitting that subscribe button if you haven't subscribed already. I definitely appreciate it. Let me get to some comments here. Carlos is checking in with us. Robert's checking in with us. Ethan's saying that it's a make or break for both Drew Smith and Tyler McGill, which I definitely agree with. Aaron is saying that Nate Lavender, who we'll talk about here in just a second, looked great against the Cards. And then Mason is saying he's got to make it down to PSL next year. Yeah, absolutely. I'm definitely in line to go there as well. It seems like an absolute blast. But MEZ chiming into the chat as well, saying that he'd have Quintana, agreeing with you, Rob. Like I said, that's the safest probably choice to have because of that little pick-me-up, like you just said. That is the veteran, and he proved that he was able to come back with a vengeance after that injury last season. He looked great. So that's the safest option. But with where I project personally Luis Severino to be at by the end of the season, I've went on record here on my channel on the Mets Hot Stove Live. I've said that Luis Severino, when it's all said and done, is going to be the best Mets acquisition of this offseason. Now, I know that's not saying much, but nonetheless, I truly do think that. And I think that he's going to beat out those projections that we went over on the channel. Those 26 game started projection, they had him at like what, 4.2 ERA, something like that. It was in the low fours. I think he's going to be in the threes. And I think that the K numbers are going to show themselves as well with that arsenal. So I would like to see that confidence be set in Luis Severino to be like, hey, listen, we know you weren't that guy last year. We know you've been struggling and you're coming off of a down year, but let's set that tone, and you're going to be that guy to set that tone for us. Just my personal opinion. I definitely do agree, though, that right now, barring anything else drastic that we don't see behind the scenes, Jose Quintana probably is going to be that number one option. I will say that. MEZ also saying that it's a make or break year for Jeremy Hefner. So there's that. But let's get into that quote, because I definitely agree with you. Like this team has been relatively great in opening days for the last however many years, right? They have a great record in opening day. But like you said, they do need that pick-me-up, especially after an offseason like this. Now, I want to get into this offseason a little bit because this stirred the pot here on my X account when I had tweeted this out earlier during the game. And people are still chiming in. They're still liking it hours later, and I'm getting a lot of different opinions here on my X account. Gary Cohen on today's broadcast asked David Stearns to explain to the fans. They did a sit-down interview with him. He was right in between Ron and Gary today. And Gary Cohen asked him straight up, explain to the fans why there weren't bigger named acquisitions this season or this offseason. To which David Stearns, and I quote, replied, this is an organization that has done it in the past. Done it meaning the big named acquisitions. He said, and we'll certainly do it again, but it has to be for the right player. And he went on to say, we already made that attempt in terms of signing Yoshinobu Yamamoto. Obviously, they're still open to breaking the bank for the player, but it has to be the right situation. What do you think of this answer, Rob? Because a lot of people aren't happy in my mentions, and I got to tell you, I was just the messenger of what David Stearns said. I thought it was a perfect answer, and I definitely agree with him. it does need to be the right player. It cannot be aimless spending like we've seen in seasons prior. I went on record, and I know in hindsight, Emmys is going to get at me in the chat here for saying, well, at the time, we didn't think it was aimless spending when we went out and got Marte for that $78 million contract, or we went and paid Verlander and Scherzer $40+ million. But nonetheless, that's how we're looking at it right now. How do you analyze David Stern's answer to Gary Cohen here about this past offseason that has been tough on us as content creators? It has been tough on us fans. I came into this offseason thinking that this team was going to go balls to the wall, lights out. Let's go get this team revamped. But with the payroll situation, we could all objectively sit back and say, listen, that probably wasn't in the cards, especially with a new president of baseball operations. What do you make of it?
Yeah, and before I get to the Stearns comments, great job by Gary Cohen throwing a haymaker there, because that's exactly what the Met fans wanted to know. And we haven't heard reporters. God knows we know about the reporters, and I think this is a direct reason why Gary Cohen actually asked that question, because even Gary Cohen knows that the reporters have been given, subpar questions to David Stearns and not really putting that pressure on him. And look, David Stearns couldn't dodge that question. Right live during the spring training game when a lot of Met fans are watching, that was the perfect answer for David Stearns. No matter if you like the comment or not, it was a perfect answer, because we talked about this on many, many hot stoves throughout the offseason. What did we talk about? You can't just spend money to please your fans, right? If the Mets would have spent $200 million this offseason on players that some might like, some might not like, it would have been okay just because they spent the money. That's the problem that you can fall into when you have an owner with a ton of money, right? The Angels for years spent a ton of money. Where did that get them? Nowhere. Yeah, sometimes you have to, balance it out a little bit with some prospects, maybe some acquisitions via trade, maybe, middle of the road signings that you might not think is a big deal now, but in the middle of the year or the end of the year, they might be big parts of the team. And David Stern, it was the perfect answer, because spending is spending. Yes, that's understandable. It gets the fans very excited, because I don't care what anybody says. When the Mets signed Scherzer, it put them back on the map. No matter what you thought about Scherzer and the dead on with the Dodgers in the playoffs, the fact of the matter is there was a big name player that wanted to come to the Mets. Regardless, look, every player is going to take the most money. So to say that, the Mets gave him the most money, of course. But if the Dodgers would have offered him $5 million more, he would have went to the Dodgers. The fact of the matter is, if the New York Mets want to sustain stability and sustain success, that means going to the playoffs every year, because you notice you get into the playoffs every year, there's a pretty damn good chance you can go on a run at one of those or multiple times. The fact of the matter is, because of the Mets go to the playoffs every 6 to 7 years, it's hard to say, let's see if they can go on a run. It's not easy going on a run one time out of 6 years when you make the playoffs. If you make it 2, 3, 4 years in a row, guess what? There's a pretty good chance that you might be able to go on a run and have that sustained success. And that's a problem that I think Met fans are falling into, that little trap that, we have the most money, we have to spend. Of course we have to spend. But we also have a new regime. When you get a new regime, there's turnover. When there's a new regime, you have different opinions. You have different philosophies. And people who were clamoring to fire Billy Epler last year, fire Buck Showalter, fire this one, fire that one, well, you got your wish. And with that new regime, you get an evaluation year from the front office. Now, they might tell you they're a playoff team, or they believe they're a playoff team. They might believe that, honest to God. But the fact of the matter is, you have to understand that spending money doesn't always mean success. I'm not breaking any news here. We all talked about, look, Met fans have been doing this for years. How many years in a row have we killed the Yankee fans? Oh, you bought your world championships. You bought your world championships. Well, they bought 2009, right? They didn't buy the late 90s championships, because it was mostly prospects and smart trades during the season. The Davis Justice trades, the O'Neill trades, the Tina Martinez trades, stuff like that. And I don't want to bring up the Yankees, but they have 30 years of a run of sustained success of, 90 plus wins, over 500, making the playoffs the majority of those years. That's important. And I think we have to start realizing that smart spending is where you need to be, especially if you got the farm system that we have now and the core that everybody's telling you, the Nimmos, the McNeils, and the Lindors, and hopefully the Alonsos, that you believe in this core. Well, you can believe in that core all you want, but it's not always just about spending just to spend, just to please your fan base. Because what if we sign JD Martinez? Every Met fan would be very excited, right? If we sign him tomorrow. What if he has a bad season? The same people that wanted him are going to say, oh, I knew that 36-year-old wasn't going to be any good. Yeah, of course you're going to say that after the fact. The fact of the matter is you have to spend the right way. If the Mets don't believe in JD Martinez, if the Mets don't believe in Jordan Montgomery, why spend that money when you don't believe in a player? We might believe in him, but if the people who are the evaluators, the people who, all the Met fans who wanted David Stearns, you got to believe in him. If he don't believe it's the right price for those players, believe in him. He has a track record of bringing the Brewers, that were not a very good team prior to when he took over, 6 out of 8 years, made the playoffs. That's important to realize.
Did you see what JD Martinez's asking price still is? I know we've been speculating on his asking price coming down, but I was like, this, Rob, on our live streams. I know that you were saying that JD Martinez's price could be coming down and we could be seeing the Mets make a little bit of a run at him. I think that was probably before we've seen some of the other acquisitions. I think right now we could probably agree maybe that it's a little bit of a pipe dream for JD Martinez to join the Mets, but I don't know your full opinion, so please give that on this stream. But nonetheless, he's still asking for $20 million. And I said back then, I was like, just a few weeks ago, when Justin Turner signed that 1 year, $13 million deal with the Toronto Blue Jays, I was like, if he got $13 million, which I think in all honesty is a fair price, right? For what Justin Turner provides, I was like, a 3-time All-Star back-to-back in the last 3 seasons, a guy coming off of 33 home runs, hitting over 270 with an over 850 OPS, I believe he had last year. He's going to want a couple more $1 million than $13 million. And I was projecting it to be around 16, 17. But to hear the reports and see the reports that he's still asking for $20 million, and I believe that report came out because before the Giants signed Jorge Soler, they made an offer to JD Martinez. And that's when they figured out what his asking price was. Scott Boras' clients, man. Both him, Jordan Montgomery, by the way, to your point, I don't think Jordan Montgomery is going to be worth what he gets, especially if he's getting anything north of 4 years on that deal. I think he's a solid 3 in this league, but when you're asking for $25 to $30 million AAV, I'm not quite sure I want to make that investment. And Aaron Nola just signed an extension for $24.5 million. Sonny Gray just got $25 million a year over 3 years. I wonder what Jordan Montgomery is going to want to end up with, but regardless, these asking prices are not conducive to the fact that the Mets, one, have made it a point all offseason from the start that they weren't going to have that type of offseason, and they've stuck to that plan. But two, for the quite simple matter of the fact that these players really, especially at this juncture of the offseason, when a lot of people want to talk about the Mets still potentially signing these guys, I don't think they're worth what they're asking for. So we'll see how it inevitably shakes out. But I just thought that was pretty interesting and how it was. But like I said, smash on that like button, guys. I appreciate you guys being here. Sir Foul Players here. Big CP. Appreciate you always tuning in. Thank you for the support. Explosive saying I can only imagine making the playoffs for 30 straight years. Absolutely. Sanders is saying maybe MLB institutes a signing deadline date for these free agents. I don't think that's ever going to happen. I think that we're in agreement on that, Rob. I don't think that's ever going to be sit over well with the players, and that's just not going to happen. But it's a good idea in theory if everyone was on board. But let's get back into a little bit about the Mets discussion about the spring training. I know we went off a little bit on a tangent with David Stearns, and we can revisit that topic if we get to it down the line here. But I want to talk about, we mentioned some prospects, right? As it relates and stays onto the pitching before we move over to the offense, I want to talk about the feasibility in your mind that a guy like Mike Vasil cracks this rotation with what we have on the screen here with these two guys? In your opinion, I thought that it might be feasible for Mike Vasil to crack this rotation come opening day after the Kodai Senga injury. But after I crunched some roster numbers, and I wish I had enough time to make the full roster graphic here when taking into account a Jose Buto, Tyler McGill, Joey Lucchesi, etc., I'm not so sure it's going to happen. Which is unfortunate because I really do want to see what he has. And I think that this Kodai Senga injury, as unfortunate as that is, we lose our ace for who knows how long. That could have been the perfect storm for Mike Vasil to see what we had early and often. Do you think that's feasible at all, or do you think he's going back to AAA to try to hash out some of those numbers over there in Syracuse?
I mean, it goes back to the competition issue, right? Situation.
Yeah.
You know, if he pitches the best, yeah, I'd love him to get that fifth that spot in the rotation. But the way I see it, I think they want to make sure these guys get enough innings in at least AAA, at least for the first month. I think that some of these guys might in April might play to their might play so great in the minors for that first month and force the Mets' hand, as we seen Jeff McNeil do a few years back. Guys play into forcing the front office to making that move to the majors, and I think that's what Mike Vasil has to do. I think he has to just it sucks, show a little something in spring where they keep an eye on you, and if you have a good first month of the minors, they might think about it. If somebody's struggling in the bullpen, but Mike Vasil, they talked about him possibly being a long man. Would they trust a young kid, first time in the majors, throw him into the bullpen as a long man, or God forbid, if there is another injury, you have to start thinking about these guys. I mean, I think Jose Budo or Lucchesi will get that shot, but if Mike Vasil performing better than those guys, maybe he will. Again, this is the unknown that we don't know about David Stearns. David Stearns is not shy. He's talked about it. He's not shy about giving the young players a chance. And
Right.
I do think that I would not be shocked if there's one or two guys that, somebody brought up Yohan Ramirez today, who pitched pretty well. And, we're going to talk about the bullpen in a little bit. But, there's guys that Stearns might be, has on a piece of paper that is he's focusing in on with, offensively and pitching, where if they do a good job, they could take a spot from somebody that you might think have a roster spot and might not be on the roster on opening day. So I wish Mike Vasil
Drew Smith.
Say that again?
I said cough, cough, Drew Smith.
Yeah, exactly. So, I would love Mike Vasil to get the best opportunity to make the team if he has the best numbers. But again, because of the unknown with David Stearns, I don't know. Personally, I'd love to see it, but I think he's going to start in the minors and get at least a month in before they make a decision on him.
Yeah, and Ricardo's saying that here in the chat as well, and this is something that I was going to bring up directly after and sort of changing my opinion here. David Stearns also did say that there wasn't going to be an emphasis on rushing prospects just to rush them. He actually did say that in the same sit-down interview today to Gary and Ron on the broadcast, saying that even if there's an immediate hole needed to be filled in the major league roster, if it's very early on and they still feel like these prospects need a couple more, games or just more time in the minor leagues at their respective level, then they're not going to pull the trigger just to do it and rush these guys up. So, like I said, we'll see how David Stearns manages this from top to bottom. Obviously, we know that David Stearns is driving this boat, but we'll see how the prospects sort of game and the promotions are dealt with this season. And that's going to be something that I'm very curious about, because we have a handful of prospects that are ready at this point, that you can make an argument for, that are ready to come up if need be. And we'll see how long the waiting game truly is. But let's talk about the bullpen, like you just said, and keep it, staying on the pitching. We got a couple of different names that have been impressive here over the first two games here. A guy like Yohan Ramirez, who was throwing 95, 96, I believe, in his outing today, looked great. Yaxel Rios yesterday looked absolutely phenomenal as well. He was a guy that had a great 2021 numbers. Didn't really play much last season in MLB level, but he did play for Team Puerto Rico. He showed that he has some serious stuff in the tank as well. And the most popular guy probably of these three names and who we've heard before as a 24-year-old prospect is Mr. Nate Lavender, Southpaw. Nate Lavender doesn't throw hard, has a very funky delivery, and he sort of alluded to the fact that I was reading an article saying that he got some inspiration from Nestor Cortez about that funky delivery. And I love the post-game interview that he did. And I forgot who quote tweeted it. I believe it might have been you even on X. I'm not sure who it was, but he gave a response to sort of the low velocity that he throws. He didn't throw a single pitch in his 14 pitches in yesterday's outing over 92 miles per hour. And that is something that it's like, wow, everyone thinks, oh, velocity, velocity, velocity. That's something that I've been preaching as well in this bullpen is velocity. But it truly goes to show if a guy knows how to locate and he's confident in his pitches, it can go a very long way. And that's exactly what Nate Lavender said in his post-game interview. He said, I'm not naive to the fact that I don't throw 95, 96, 97. I know I throw 92, but I have to be ever more confident in every single pitch that I throw, throwing that 92, that I can get it right by those guys just as much and just as efficiently as if I were to be throwing 95 or 96. And he just sort of like seemed like he had that bulldog mentality, not only on the mound, but just taking the fans and the media through what he was saying in the post game. I loved it. He was very impressive. Believe he K'd the side, if I'm not mistaken. I got to go back and check on that, but only 14 pitches, 11 strikes, located. The velocity wasn't there, but this is a guy to definitely watch out for. This bullpen now has lefties and Jake Diekman and Brooks Raley, but Nate Lavender, if push comes to shove, this guy's 24 years old. He sort of fast-tracked Double-A, went to Triple-A after only 7 games in Double-A last season. This is a name. Excuse me if my audio is sounding a little funky. Let me know in the chat if it is or not, Rob. I'm not sure if you can still hear me. But this is a guy that can definitely at some point, maybe even in 2024, surprise some people by being called up. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, we talked about this during our roster projections. How many spots could be available in the bullpen? Probably 1 or 2, possibly 3. I see it like this. And Easy just said, relax, it's only 1 appearance. But he's been outstanding from the low rookie ball all the way up to AAA. He's been outstanding in the minors for a couple of years. And he knows it. We know he don't throw hard, but you know what? We talk about this all the time with pitchers. Are you a thrower or are you a pitcher? Nate Lavender looks like a pitcher, right? Sometimes you got to have a good head in your shoulders, right? We talked about Drew Smith. He's a thrower. He's not a pitcher. With his stuff, if he learned how to quote unquote pitch, he would be a better pitcher. But because he's a thrower and doesn't think on the run, you see Nate Lavender, he has to be methodical with his pitches. He has to locate perfectly. And throughout the quick minor league career that he has, he went from rookie ball all the way up to triple year in a year and a half. That's something that is somewhat rare for a pitcher, and especially a guy who doesn't throw hard. And because he's a lefty, it's not always about throwing hard as a lefty, as we well knew throughout baseball. It's, analytics, you want all the pitchers to throw hard, but it seems like every organization throws analytics out the window when it comes to a lefty, because lefties, if they figure out a way to repeat their mechanics and locate their pitches, they can be very successful in Major League Baseball. And especially with the new revamped bullpen that David Stearns put together, there's a lot of high velocity guys in this, possibly in our bullpen. And to have a guy that has a little bit of a funky motion, and someone, I think, somebody Shea talked about, he has a Billy Wagner type of delivery, but he doesn't throw as hard, obviously. But it is very interesting to realize the fact of the matter is, like Anthony said, he has the potential to be very good, because you don't have that type of stats in the minors throughout it, even though it hasn't been a long minor league career. and still not. He probably could be a good major leaguer. Now, again, I'm not going to go crazy over one start, but he's shown it in every step of the minors that he's actually very good. And I think he had about 40 games, I think, in AAA, and he said he had 7 in AA, and he was better in, I believe, AAA, if I'm not mistaken, or AA, but I think it was like a 3 ERA in AAA, if I'm not mistaken. Let me see.
It was a 3.47 ERA in AAA. I'm not sure what it was in AA, but it was like 30-some games, mid-30s compared to 7 games. I mean, you can't compare those two.
Yeah, overall, he had a 2.98 ERA in 42 games in AA and minor league together, in AAA together, excuse me. So, again, he struck out guys, that probably aren't going to make the majors yesterday. But still, the fact of the matter is that I do like the fact that these are guys that are, invites to spring training that nobody's really thinking of. And always, every single year, we see players that are, non-roster invitees, guys that are on minor league deals that people don't think are going to make the team, and they show up and they open up some eyes and they make the team. And why can't Lavender do it? And again, he's a good depth piece to have, worst case scenario in AAA. If one of your bullpen guys that you bring up on opening day are struggling, well, guess what? Bring them up. Is David Stearns, is he concerned about 3 lefties in the bullpen? I don't think it matters. I think you need 2. I don't think it's a death sentence for Nate Lavender because he would be the 3rd lefty in the bullpen. I don't think it matters. But hey, listen, if he's one of the better pitchers, why can't he take the spot of a Drew Smith? You know what I'm saying, Chris?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. And we'll see about the 3 lefties anyways, because you still have Joey Lucchesi. We'll see if he starts off on the major league roster as well with these 2 guys on your screen. This is what I'm saying. Like, I think we definitely should at the end of spring training. I know we did that live stream and we broke all the positions down and talking about the opening day roster. I think we should definitely reevaluate that again, especially after spring training, and seeing how some of these competitions get thrown out. I definitely want to get to some of the comments here as well. MEZ is telling us chill out on Nate Lavender because he's only had 1 great appearance. MEZ, I understand you. I mean, we're here talking about the first 2 days of spring training. I understand this is a guy that a lot of people were talking about at the tail end of last season as well in terms of being excited. And this is a guy that's 24 years old. He's not getting any younger down in the minor leagues. So by virtue of that trade, I mean, we're gonna have to see him at some point if the Mets really do value Nate Lavender on the MLB roster. So that's kind of why we're talking about him as much as we're talking about him. Ricardo here actually had a great question for both of us, Rob, asking if we can explain the whole service time thing and how it works. Listen, this is a very, very just obscure, I guess, a topic and sort of rule. Essentially, how it works is there's 187 days that the MLB has deemed to be, I guess, a MLB season or 187 games played throughout the season. If a player accrues 172 out of 187 of those days, then he has deemed to have 1 year of service time. So teams will typically delay bringing up a prospect after the first month to sort of say he didn't reach that full 172 days and therefore he does not have a year. And it basically saves them a year in the back end. This is a conversation that has been picked up on Pete Alonso and talking about how he was I guess, brought up in 2019 and how we could have mitigated this whole situation of free agency this year if they had played their cards right in 2019. Personally, I don't like to I hate that argument. I absolutely hate it. To be honest with you, I understand why it's a thing, but I'm like, if the guy's ready, like I have no quarrels with what happened with Pete Alonso in 2019. I got no quarrels about that. I don't care. You're gonna have to either sign him this offseason, or if he had stayed down that 2019 season, you would have had to sign him in the next offseason. It don't really matter. To be honest, I'm not sure if you have a difference of opinion, but I don't really care. But anyways, that's a general synopsis. 172 days out of 187. That's why the delay up front for prospects usually saves the service year time in year 1 to get that extra year in the back end, Ricardo. Hopefully that explanation made a little bit of sense. Honestly, it's very confusing, but that's how I read the rule, and that's how I know the rule. Rob, excuse me. Sorry, down wrong windpipe. Anything to add on to that?
Oh yeah, I actually wrote that down on a napkin in the hotel room about the service time when I was searching it when I saw that comment a little earlier. So yeah, I agree with you. Like the whole Pete Alonso thing, you wouldn't have had the rookie home run record if he didn't come up, right? And it could have mean a lot of things. And again, that was a Wilpon error, right? They were forced to bring up Pete Alonso, right? They were dying for some offense, and they needed it, and they needed something to bring out the fan base. And I think the Wilpons, who, we can't stand them, but they weren't very stupid either. They know that they had to, bring the fans to come to Citi Field. You would have never had 35,000 the last couple of games of the season if it wasn't for Pete Alonso going for that rookie home run record in the last series of the year against the Braves. So you look at it a lot of ways. I don't think it's much of an issue now with service time as it was a few years back. Some teams probably are going to, pay attention to that. I don't think Steve Cohen's going to care about 6 years from now when a guy becomes a free agent. If he can help your team now, he'll help your team now. If Drew Gilbert comes up and helps your team in May, they're not going to care, right? But the fact of the matter is, service time is a stupid way of Major League Baseball protecting the owners and protecting the organization, which is understandable. If there's no owners, there's no organization. If there's no organization, there's no players. And people have to realize that there's a process to all of this as well. But yeah, service time is stupid, but I understand it from a commissioner and owner perspective, that why you have to, lose a year if you don't have to. If your team's in it and you need that extra bat or that extra arm, they'll probably, say, okay, the hell with the service time. I'll worry about that 6 years from now. That's when they'll probably worry about that. But now I don't think it's too much of an issue. But the service time, as you brought up, Chris, that is right. I checked it. And I think there's another thing that you have to wait 2 weeks after opening day to bring up a guy. Because I think if you bring him up 2 weeks, the first 2 weeks of the season, I think it's automatic that the service time goes into effect. I'm not 100% sure on that. I didn't want to, look down for 20 minutes looking for it. But I think if you bring them up right away and you don't wait the 2 weeks, I think that service time already kicks in for that first year. But I could be wrong on that. But you're right about the days when it comes to the service.
And I believe Ronnie Mauricio will still be a rookie when he comes back next season too. So that is something that, yes, Ricardo, he is going to be a rookie. He does not have a year technically under his belt. I'm just surprised that it's 172 and that's how much it is for 1 year out of 187 days. I would think it'd be a little bit less than that, but nonetheless, I'm not here to be a rule maker or analyze that. But nonetheless, and a lot of people are saying this is only spring training. Anthony's saying it here. Only the first 2 days of spring training, but there are about 2 to 3 bullpen spaces left, and these guys don't have a lot of margin for error. So they have to be pretty impressive from beginning to end. Exactly. Absolutely, Anthony. That's why we want to talk about these guys, especially a guy like Nate Lavender, who has everything in the world to prove with given where he's at right now, still in the minor leagues, being 24 years old. He's not getting any younger, like I just said a couple minutes ago, and therefore he's going to want to come up, and the Mets are inevitably going to want him to come up sooner rather than later. Like, we don't want 26-year-old rookies, right? Glorified AAA guys coming up in a couple years. Like, we want to see what these guys have now, and that's the point of 2024, I would assume, right? And it is saying here what we all are thinking. Everyone is buying a Lavender jersey as we speak. Hop on the train. Mine is actually coming tomorrow, right in the mail. So absolutely. Listen, we're about 53 minutes into the stream here. Yaxel Rios did definitely look great. I did mention that a couple minutes ago as well. He looked really good. 10 pitches, 10 strikes in the same game in game one. Yeah, he looked good. Yohan Ramirez looked good. Nate Lavender looked good. Those are the bullpen guys that look great. Austin Adams looked okay today as well. I was actually pretty high on Austin Adams when we signed him, given what he had on the spin rate, all of his movement. I like all that. So yeah, these guys, this bullpen's deep. Even the guys that we weren't batting an eye at, or most fans weren't batting an eye at, like Yaxel Rios or like a Yohan Ramirez or Austin Adams, like, we were here as content creators telling you all about these guys, but a lot of I don't blame fans for just not batting an eye at them, because Yaxel Rios is a guy that didn't play the majority of the year last year or at all. Like, he had his best year in 2021. But then he went, Team Puerto Rico looked pretty decent, and the Mets signed him to a minor league deal with an invitation to spring training. And here he is. He looks great. So absolutely, Yaxel Rios is definitely a name to keep an eye out on. And absolutely, Austin Adams, another one. Ricardo saying. Let's move on, because we've been talking about pitching here for the first half. This might be a little bit of a longer stream, and I apologize, Rob. I know you're pretty tired. You got the sunburn going on. You look great, though. You look great on camera. It's awesome, and I'm glad the hotel Wi-Fi is holding up. Yes. Let's talk about some of our offense. Let's talk about what we've been seeing. I mean, headlined obviously by Francisco Alvarez's 2-run Oppo home run today, but a guy that we've been talking about for quite some time. I know we're both high on him. I know a lot of other people in this fan base are high on him, but there's a lot of people in this fan base that have forgotten about a name like Alex Ramirez, who had 2 singles yesterday. I believe he had a walk today, but he struck out looking in his first at bat. Looked pretty impressive nonetheless. A guy, to your credit, that you said put on 25 pounds since the beginning of last season in 2023 till now. He was at 170 going into 2023. Now he's sitting at 196. He's 6'3". He's lanky, very lanky frame, tall frame. But this is a guy that was at one point the Mets, a Mets top 5 prospect ever since before they got that haul. He was a top 5 prospect. And he was a guy that in the 2022 season, when the Mets were debating whether to add a guy like Wilson Contreras from the Cubs, or maybe an Ian Happ or David Robertson or whatever to bolster this organization, this team in that 101-win season, Alex Ramirez was thought of as that guy to be in that main package, as that main piece. But he went out there, started in high A Brooklyn, looked bad for the whole entirety of 2023, and a lot of people with this new revamped farm have forgotten about Alex Ramirez. His defense is elite. He can play all 3 outfield positions, and he does it at a very high level. The offense is something that we're going to have to see out of him, and we're going to have to see if we can see that 5-tool. Let's face it, this guy was thought of as a 5-tool player. We'll see if we can see that consistently. What do you think about Alex Ramirez, and what do you think about all these other prospects that we've been seeing? I just wanted to bring up Alex Ramirez first, because I know that we're very high on him as Mets fans. What do you think? What have you been seeing?
Yeah, and when we talked about our roster projections, we both brought up Alex Ramirez as a guy to potentially watch here, especially with the outfield situation that could be very, let's be honest, open. We don't know if Bader's going to be around with his injuries history. We don't know about Marte. So these are guys that you really have to look at going forward. Yes, Tyrone Taylor, and Anthony brought it up too. He does have to put on muscle. And I saw him firsthand yesterday. He played right field. He runs like a gazelle. He's so smooth in the outfield. I mean, with the sunny skies and not easy to look at pop-ups, he ran perfectly, no problems. He's really good defensively. He got a great arm. He made a great relay throw from the gap in right center to nail a guy at third base, hit the cutoff man perfectly. He has a gun for an arm. The defense is there. Like you said, they projected him to be a 5-tool player. Right now, he's like a 4.5-tool player. Yeah. His bat needs to come around. He's got the power. He's still got to lower those strikeouts a little bit and put the bat on the ball a little bit more, but he has all the tools to do so. He did put on muscle a little bit. Again, he's still a lanky guy. He's still very young. He's 6'3". He did put on muscle, as I said. He looked a little bit bigger than he did 2-3 years ago, but he is a guy. He had a really good performance in game 1. He hit the ball the opposite way, which the Mets have been working a lot on. I read Joe DeMayo's. If you look at Joe DeMayo's reports over the last couple of years about Alex Ramirez, he had a problem pulling off on balls, stepping in the bucket. He did a lot of that. Yesterday, hit a ball the other way, the opposite field. He's putting the bat on the ball more. He has more of that level swing now than 2 years ago. He had that big uppercut swing. If you go back to a couple of his minor leagues appearances, you'll see that he had that big uppercut swing. So he's learning on the job here. He's starting to get better. I told you this, Chris. I think I told you or Hayden, somebody, that every time I'm going on to the backfields at Port St. Lucie, Alex Ramirez is always working defensively at the plate, everything, doing pepper drills, everything on the backfield. And he's a guy that really does work hard, which early on, when he first the Mets first signed him, it was the work ethic that was talked about a lot. But his work ethic got a lot better, and I like to see that. But he is a guy to watch for because he is a guy that, you know what, was a top 5 prospect, as you said, Chris. He is a guy with so much potential. The Mets didn't want to trade him for the Contreras or the Haps of the world a couple of years back. They like him, and I think David Stearns likes him, right? He's getting a ton of looks right now early on. I think he's a guy that I would not be shocked is the first one to be called up if you needed an outfielder before Drew Gilbert, before any other outfielder that you might know of in the farm. I think he's the first guy to be called up if there's an injury to Bader, if there's an injury to Marte or Nimmo or whatever. The fact that Alex Ramirez is very interesting to look at.
And that would be just because of his, I guess, tenure in the organization. Because let's not forget that he did struggle in high A ball. So it's depending on where we see him at and going back to high A, proving himself there, or just starting him off in double A right away. I think that if he is that first prospect in the outfield, it would definitely be due to tenure and maybe not so much readiness. Because I think that for me personally, he's still got a lot left to prove. And I think that a guy like Drew Gilbert, or even Jet Williams, if they make that transition to center field, are a lot more polished. But this is a guy that we're definitely very, very in on, right? I think that we can say that to a T. And the one thing that you just said there is his approach and hitting the ball the opposite way. Now, I hope Carson from the Mets Weekly podcast is not here because he despises opposite field hitting. And I hear him because we want to see the home run ball. I understand that. But to me, opposite field hitting is something that every major leaguer, you can tell they are right in their swing when they're hitting the ball efficiently the other way. Now, I'm not saying you in and out a ball that's inside and you bloop it to the other side of the field. No, you got to pull it when it's inside. But listen, when you have an outside pitch, if you're trying to pull off that ball, you're going to be grounding it to the shortstop or third baseman, or you're just going to swing over the top of it, and it's not going to look pretty. That is something that Michael Conforto, when he first came up with the New York Mets, did very, very well. And that was peak Michael Conforto. Very good opposite field hitter. Freddie Freeman does the same thing. Probably, I would say, in my opinion, the best hitter all around in the league is Freddie Freeman, and he loves that opposite field. Pete Alonso, same thing. When he's not pulling off the ball, and when Pete Alonso is right, he's driving balls to that right center field gap and even over the fence with his power. Like, this is something that needs to be prioritized, and I'm happy to see Alex Ramirez incorporating that into his game. Because a lot of fans out there, like, we love the home run balls, and I understand it. That's where you make your bread and butter, especially come playoff time where the opposing team is hitting the balls over the fence. But the art and the aspect of opposite field hitting is something that I like, and I like to see Alex Ramirez doing that early and often with those singles that he got there. A lot left to prove for Alex Ramirez. I think we can both confidently say that. He's got a lot left to prove, but I know this confidence, the confidence in this front office in him, because they protected him back in November from the Rule 5 draft. They selected him and opted to put him on the 40-man roster, and that's why we're seeing him in spring training. He was Rule 5 eligible, and other teams had a chance to go out and get Alex Ramirez into their organization, and the Mets mitigated that by saying, nope, you're going on to the 40-man, and we're protecting you. So that's something that, David Stearns' regime doesn't matter. They still have to get familiar with these prospects, but that's a guy that they definitely did their research on and made that decision accordingly to protect them from the Rule 5 draft. So I love it. Other guys to name here. We've seen the Luis Angel Acuñas looks great at shortstop. Electric arm. Put a tweet up on my X account of him side by side taking grounders. Jose Reyes versus Luis Angel. The same motion, the way they approach the ball, the way that they shuffle their feet through the contact in the glove, the quick glove movement to the hip and that short arm action in the follow through to first base is something that is a spitting image of Jose Reyes and the defensive mechanics. And I love the bat. Okay, we're going to talk about the bat later because I haven't seen that sort of upside and potential yet to Luis Angel Acuna's bat. But nonetheless, he looks very polished out there at shortstop. And this is a guy that with second base, we don't know what we're going to get, to be honest with you. We know McNeil's there to start off right now, but if anything happens in the outfield, another situation that you can have is McNeil going back to the outfield, and then you have an open roster spot at second base. And I know that his arm with that short arm action doesn't really project to be a third baseman, but I would like to see him at least get a couple innings in spring training at third base as well. I don't know if that's where he's going to eventually end up. He's a little bit shorter, doesn't really have the body frame to be that third baseman. I understand that, and it's a whole different ball game to go from the middle infield to third base, but that's something that I did, I guess, sort of spitball and bring that idea up. But who else? You saw Kevin Parada with the back pick. People in the comment section here saying that's very impressive. Another guy that needs to prove his defense is there. And Kevin Parada, who are you most excited that we've been seeing in the first 2 days here out of these prospects?
Kevin Parada is down on my list. Not because of his performance last year in the minors that he struggled, but just because Alvarez seems like he's going to be the real deal. I think Kevin Parada is. I want him to have a great year because that means that's another key asset we have if we need to use it for a trade. But yeah, Acuna, I tell you right now, he's got the glove of a middle infielder, no doubt. Like, yeah, I would love to see him at third base, no problem. But I think, you know what? Let's try to get him more at second base, to be quite honest with you, because look, Lindor is not going anywhere. We have 47 shortstops and 37, third basemen, and let's work on up the middle here. So, I think he's got the potential. Look, he's shorter than his brother, right? He's shorter than Ronald. I don't know if he's gonna get taller, but he is built. He is stocky. He got a ton of speed. His glove is really good. I'm not worried about that. I don't know if he's gonna have the potential power-wise, like his brother. I think he could be a 15 to 20 home run guy. I think if he develops that bat a little bit more. But with his speed and the new rules with the stolen bases, he needs to work on getting that bat on the ball. And you've seen that he didn't look great at the plate. Like he looked, he was spinning out of his shoes with certain pitches. Like he's not very good adjusting to a breaking ball yet. You could see that in game number 1 when he got that at bat. Like the guy was throwing okay sliders and his knees were buckling. And that's something that he has to learn. And that's what development is. That's what minor leagues are for, to develop and learn. But I think he has the potential. The glove is there. You talked about Jose Reyes. He's got that potential glove-wise and speed-wise. I just would love to see, we right away when we made that trade with Scherzer, we knew his bat wasn't at the caliber that we need him to be. And that takes time. Some things come earlier, like the glove. Like sometimes you're just a natural defensive player and the bat comes later. We'll see. Maybe he does become a power guy. But I do like Acuna, a guy that, yes, he could be potentially an option down the road this year based on injuries if McNeil got to go to the outfield. But I think they would really like to keep Acuna in the minors this year just to protect him, get all the games underneath him, and work on that hidden ability, which I think he can have because he did show a little bit he has a pretty decent level swing. And from the right field area where I was sitting, he has a stance just like his brother. You would think it's
spitting image
far away. It's great. But I think Acuna is probably another year away unless drastic things happen with a ton of injuries. But you see the potential. And we just hope that next year he's a guy that we really be talking about for a roster spot on opening day.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. We got 40 people in the chat here. Make sure you guys are hitting that thumbs up, hitting the subscribe button to both channels in the description for more Mets content. We are just Just over a month away from opening day. Rob, I know we're talking about it. I'm going to be up there on the 30th on Saturday at Citi Field with Pask. Anybody in the chat that's there at Citi Field that wants to say what's up, we're probably going to be in the parking lot very early to try to just, tailgate a little bit and say what's up to people. So that's definitely something that we're planning. So anybody in the chat that wants to come say hi to us, myself, Pask, and Rob, if we can get that together, then definitely go ahead and do so. Hit that thumbs up on the stream and make sure you guys are continuing to subscribe and comment your thoughts in the live chat. I want to hear what you all have to say. Thank you all so much for the support. But yeah, like you said, and I like this comment from M-Easy a lot here. This makes a lot of sense to me. Hopefully, Luis Angel can be more of a poor man's Ozzy Albies than his brother Ronald Acuna. And when I look at the size, when I look at the stockiness, obviously one's a lefty, one's a righty, and they both probably project out to play second base. This is something that I would absolutely take if he's a fraction of Ozzy Albies, because Ozzy Albies, for his stature as well, is having a great career over there in Atlanta. This is a comp, M-Easy, that I like a lot. So hats off to you. I like that a lot. But yeah, Luis Angel Acuna, we'll see what he amounts to. I agree with you. I don't think he's as ready as the other guys. I'm not sure if we're going to see him. I think if we do see him in 2024, I would probably say it'd be a September call-up where the Mets aren't in a position to make the playoffs, to be honest with you. We'll see, we'll just see what happens. But yeah, his bat definitely needs some work. The defense is there. We'll see how the bat translates. And before he went live here, I was talking about when Bader is gone, this is a perfect guy if he gets that bat in order and just able to show that he can get on base. I don't care what he hits. He can hit singles for all I care. He's a perfect guy to slot in at that 9th spot and turn the lineup over to whoever's leading off next year. That would be fantastic. That'd be fantastic. But to talk about two guys that we already saw on the Mets last season, Ricardo talking about rather see Luis Angel at third than Vientos. We need to scrap that experiment ASAP. What do you make of Vientos obviously notching a hit today? I believe he had a blooper that got in there as well yesterday. Beatty also had an infield hit. What do you make of both of those performances in that quote-unquote competition that we're going to see at third base? Vientos also today booted a ball, pretty routine ball, had some weird spin on it. I'll give him that. But he booted it for an error, and then he went out there to finish off the inning and got a double play. So he looked a lot better on the second play. But also a guy that we know has been working with Lindor in the offseason. We know that his defense and his footwork isn't great. His arm is definitely better than Brett Beatty's at third base. But these guys, I guess you can call it a competition. I'm not really sure. But, I mean, we need to see something with the bat, to be honest with you, from both of these guys. That's more of what I'm looking at in the grand scheme of things. What do you make of both Brett Beatty and Mark Vientos here in the first two games?
Yeah, I didn't believe. We talked about this, a couple of streams ago about we don't believe that it's really a competition. Yeah. I think it is now, because of the fact of the couple of minor league sign-ins from Choi and Voit. I think they're really thinking about a third base competition. And with Vientos, and look, I played third base in high school and college. So I'm always watching the third baseman. Like if there's one thing that I watch every single second of while I'm at a game, because I can see the whole field, I watch third base. I watch the positioning. I watch the footwork. I watch everything, where he's setting up, where he has to be the cutoff man, everything. Everything I look at when it comes to the third baseman. The problem with Vientos, and I don't think it's necessarily catching the ball. I think it's the footwork. And the footwork could make you look like a bad defensive player, right? You saw in that play, which had a lot of topspin. If you don't know anything about third base, when there's a topspin, you got two options. Come in on the ball before it takes that next speed, that quick hop, that weird hop. When that topspin of the ball hits the dirt, you get it before it hits the dirt. You got to make a quick decision. He stopped and then retreated back, which put that ball with the topspin that bounced on the grass and then bounced on the dirt with that topspin and took a weird hop. And that's a possibility with the rocks on the dirt. What happens when you have indecision? His problem was indecision. The footwork wasn't really an issue. It was the indecision. Now, that's something that he has. The fact of the matter is, you can see the confidence is not there, right? With all the work he's been doing with Lindor, that instinct comes with confidence. And you talked about it. He made a nice double play ball. I think the confidence needs to be there. I don't think it's necessarily the glove or the footwork, even though the footwork's not great, but you can overcome that as long as you make a quicker decision. Like you can adjust and make up for that mistake early on when that ball's traveling to you by your instincts, by that quick decision. He didn't have a thought, or he didn't make that decision quickly. Like if he would have stepped up and just took 2 steps up, he would have got the ball before it bounced on the dirt. The top spin wouldn't have mattered because the top spin on the grass really just bounces like a normal ball hitting to you until it hits the dirt. So if he would have took another step or 2 forward, it would have been an easy ground ball. He would have thrown the guy out at first because he has a great arm. So with Vientos, now that I think it's a competition now just based on the at-bats they're giving to Stewart, Voit, Choi. I do think the fact that they're playing them a lot, they're playing them in the same game. I think it's a competition now that we didn't believe it was. I think it's more of a competition than we think. And there's only one reason for that. Because they believe that Vientos' bat is major league caliber over Beatty's, I think that's another reason why the competition is real now going into just game 2 of the spring training season. I do think that the competition is going to be very interesting now. I'm a big proponent of Beatty, even though I don't necessarily think he's as good as we all projected him out to be. I love his swing, but for some reason, and we're going to talk about this, he can. I don't understand him offensively. Like he doesn't lift the ball in the major leagues. He has a problem with that. He hits the ball the first or second. His first at bat yesterday, ground ball to first base. I don't know why he can lift the ball in AAA, but can't do it in the majors. It's a weird situation where I would think that he would miss the ball and not put because he don't have a problem putting the bat in the ball. That's not the issue. He just can't lift the ball because I think he's going to be a gap-to-gap hitter. I don't know what's the reason. Maybe he is just a quadruple A player and he's just not that good. But it's weird because if he was missing balls and striking out a ton, then I would be like, maybe Beatty's just not a major leaguer. But because he puts the bat on the ball means to me that he's reading the pitches well. Yeah. But he's having a hard time lifting those pitches. I don't know. What do you think, Chris? What do you think about that?
I don't know. I'd have to go back and look at his at-bats to a T because the first issue, if a guy who's a normal gap-to-gap hitter that has no problems timing up pitches and shooting them in the gaps with lift, if he starts to ground pitches uncharacteristically, no matter where it goes, it's an issue of timing for me and where that bat and its swing path is meeting the ball. And that can be whether he's too far out front or even if you're late, you can still definitely hit a ground ball by the virtue of the physics. I have to take a look at it, and it doesn't make me confident. It doesn't make me feel good when I see a clip of him. And I know I'm going to sound like I'm some sort of like self-proclaimed hitting guru, but whenever I hear players like saying that they're going to swing down the ball that already have problems hitting ground balls, and that's something that we need to work on is lift, I'm going to tell you right now, the answer is not to swing down on the ball. Regardless, that's an age-old debate amongst baseball players. You can go on down to the rabbit hole of whether it's the swing planes A, B to C, or just directly down A to C, linear versus rotational hitting. I spent all of my playing days deciphering the difference between those two, and I've looked at a ton of major league swings. I've even looked at Brett Beatty's swing in perfect game when he was taking batting practice as a top prospect, and this guy is just absolutely just like killing balls, and he's not swinging down the ball. I can tell you that. So I don't know what his mentality is. He said that he was working on something in terms of getting that bat head a little bit more controlled with the top of his hand, which I guess makes sense. But then again, like I said, I don't buy into all that. But nonetheless, I would say probably something to do with timing, but also just the mental factor of it all is as well. Early into spring training, you're coming off of a down season. Is the confidence there as well? We just talked about that defensively with Vientos. The same can be said for an offensive player like Brett Baty, who does very well under I know spring training is not the bright lights, quote unquote, but I'm talking about last year in 2023. That's a whole different ball game in Queens than it is in the minor leagues. And we don't know what his pre-pitch routine is or how he calms himself down when there's thousands of fans shouting at you as a young ball player. That's all things to take into consideration. And I know people don't want to hear that, but that's very true. And I know this is New York. You got to tune all the fans out. I get that. And maybe Brett Baty just isn't built for New York. I don't know. I'm just trying to speculate. This is all it is speculation. But there's definitely is something. I had to probably chalk it up to timing. But actually, as soon as we get off of here, I'm going to try to do a little bit of replay to see where he's catching that ball in his swing path. And I want to see if he's actually on time with these pitches. Because with the way he's grounding these balls, I would probably guess he's not on time with these pitches. So maybe something with this pre-pitch movement is off. I don't know. But nonetheless, I think that we all agree with his ground ball rate from last year in 2023. That is something that he definitely needs to figure out, is how to lift the ball, because he is a gap-to-gap hitter in AAA. And we love it because he's raking. And he goes down there last season, case in point, he hit a home run, his first at-bat, second at-bat after being sent back down. And he comes back up, and it just doesn't work out. So, yeah, Brett Baty's going to have to figure that out. I'm not sure what's going to take. Mark Vientos at this bat, I'm a little bit more confident in. I know he's got 2 singles. He had a nice little single today between shortstop and third base, put a good swing on the ball, I believe is with 2 strikes. So we'll see what happens to Mark Vientos. But the next guy I wanted to get into, very surprised. I think a lot of people are not talking about him. Not a prospect, but a guy that is new to the Mets and coming over via the trade, an Adrian Housen trade, is Tyrone Taylor. 2 singles at the leadoff spot. Definitely projected to be that 4th outfielder on the roster. This is a guy that a lot of people aren't talking about enough. And a lot of people have said this, but I also have said this even before the spring training game. Like, this is a guy that has a competent power bat. Right? Yes. He's not going to wow you and overpower you with his bat. He's not going to hit 30-plus home runs because he's not going to get that much sample size, if I had to guess, unless something goes terribly wrong and Harrison Bader goes down in the very early goings of the season. But if he does get a good amount of playing time, which I foreshadow he will, because Marte is definitely a question mark, especially with his injuries. We'll see how he gets utilized in 2024. This is a guy that's going to make an immediate impact, and he's also a guy that can also play all 3 outfield positions and is thought of as a very good defensive player. We saw him out there in center field, made a nice little play going back into the warning track. I believe it was Austin Adams who was pitching at that time. With sun in his face, Tyrone Taylor did the job, ranged over, got the ball. Like I said, very impressive, has an above average arm as well. If you look at the Savant page, definitely above average in defensive categories, but definitely his bat is something that can play very well as in addition. And when we talk about a leadoff hitter, we've had this countless debate. Is Brandon Nimmo going to lead off? Who can plug in as that leadoff hitter? Well, I'm not sure if you saw it, but Brandon Nimmo went deep against Sean Manaea in live BP, and this is a guy that I'm not expecting his home run totals to go down. Brandon Nimmo, that is. I'm expecting them to go up. I think Brandon Nimmo is going to get very close to 30 home runs this year. And the case in point, we've had this argument already, and I don't want to turn it into this argument, not an argument, but the disagreement and the debate that we've had. This is a guy that Tyrone Taylor can definitely come in and make an immediate impact, and I feel like he's been flying under the radar a little bit, Rob. What did you see from him? Obviously today, his first action as a New York Met in live games. This is something that it's great to see. And I believe he also did steal a base too. He's got that speed.
Yeah. And these are the type of players I love. The guys that know their role, does their job, and don't complain about it. Right? He's a guy, you said it, play all three outfield positions, got speed. He has the potential for a decent amount of power, and you saw what he can do with the bat without providing that power. And that's the type. These are the type of guys on your team that are so important to a team throughout a season, because not only can Tyrone Taylor start if there's an injury, but he's a threat off the bench late in the game. If you got Harrison Bader up and you need a knock, you need a ball to get over the wall, you need a big RBI, you need a guy that, if you got to get the ball over the wall, Tyrone Taylor is a guy that can step in there. And I think that's important to realize. Like, this was the Hauser Tyrone Taylor trade is so underrated, and not a people, people were like, okay, that's a decent trade. No, that's a great trade. Not only do you get a guy that gives you innings in the back of your rotation, this is the guy that can start for you on a regular basis, or be that guy that can come off the bench at any moment, that can start a few days a week. If you want to give Marte rest, Nimmo rest, Beta rest, all guys that have history of injuries, this is the perfect guy for this team. Mets didn't have that last year. And I think this is a guy this veteran guy that has the potential to be, I wouldn't consider him a fan favorite, but where most Met fans who probably looked over Tyrone Taylor is going to open up some eyes throughout the season. He is crucial for this offense throughout the season, either starting or coming off the bench. Crucial for this lineup throughout the season. And if he goes, I think this lineup is really going to make a difference because of Tyrone Taylor, either starting or off the bench. I just think he's a Swiss Army knife. That's what he is. And I think it's such an underrated move. And Stern's seen him for years along with Hauser. Tyrone Taylor is going to be a beast this year. And the power that he will show is underrated as well, that a lot of people don't really notice much because he's in Milwaukee.
And forgive me if I'm wrong, but this guy's only 24 years old as well, and the Mets have him under arbitration for the next 2 seasons. This guy is not like a 30-year-old in his prime type player. Forgive me if I'm mistaken. I'm going to look it up right now, but let's see here. I'm looking it up as we speak. Tyrone Taylor. Because I looked it up earlier today, and I was just like, I was very wowed. Like, this is a guy that you're getting. Hold on, let's see here. No, sorry, he is 30 years old. I thought he was way younger. But nonetheless, with the contract, arbitration this year, arbitration next year, arbitration the year after that. Okay, so I thought he was way younger than that. But I was correct in the fact that he is arbitration eligible for the next 2 seasons. Yeah. So the Mets have him under contract, and that's a great player that not only you get for this season, you have to worry about losing him in free agency and backfill his spot. This is a guy that, to be honest with you, I mean, he could be your everyday starter next year if he proves something.
I was just going to bring that up. That's a great point. I was just going to bring that up. If the Mets don't get Juan Soto, Tyrone Taylor. Now, Tyrone Taylor is not Juan Soto. I understand that. But Tyrone Taylor can be a right fielder next year. And he can hit 25 home runs. Bat around. He's actually a decent average hitter. If I'm not mistaken, I think you're looking at his stats right now. I think he's like a 260 career hitter, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong about that. It might be a little higher, might be a little lower. But I think he's a decent average guy. I think right now he can be a starting right fielder with no issue at all. Nobody would complain about it. Again, not Juan Soto. Not saying that, if you don't get Juan Soto, you plug in Tyrone Taylor, you're going to be happy with it. You're going to be disappointed. But you're going to be very well surprised how solid Tyrone Taylor is. And let's be honest, guys, we don't need all-stars at every position. We need solid players. Tyrone Taylor is a solid player, Chris.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I'm not going to make the excuse for the Mets to not go out there and offer up a contract to a Santander or Soto or whatnot. All I'm saying is that this guy has the potential to be something special because of the controllability of his contract. And he has the potential to provide a lot of flexibility for the New York Mets in lieu of Starling Marte being that question mark. And we answered it. If we believe that Marte is going to be on this roster. We did the Interstate Mets report this past Friday. Someone asked us if Marte is going to be on this roster past this year, and I gave a flat out answer. And my guy Pask from the Sunny Days and Flushing podcast said, no, I don't think Marte is going to be here next year, to be honest with you. However you want to cut it up, I don't think he's going to be here. So a guy like Tyrone Taylor can definitely slot in there. But and the nice thing is that he's a competent bat. Like, he's a competent bat. He's not going to wow you in any aspect, but he's competent on both sides of the ball. And that is what is underrated. And I like that aspect of Tyrone Taylor. Anybody else that we may be forgetting? I know Francisco Alvarez headlined the day with a 2-run home run. A couple other guys looked impressive. I know Jose Iglesias, the journeyman, had a nice little swing on the ball today, opposite field hit. Anybody else that we're missing here? This is sort of an hour and a half into the stream, talking about some guys that wowed us and sort of keeping our eyes out on. Guys in the chat, like, this is day 2 of spring training. We're doing a little bit of a synopsis. We understand. We're not taking this, with the full grain of salt. We're taking this one day at a time and seeing how these guys progress. But we want to give you all an update here about what we're seeing and the conversations that we should be surrounding this organization going into opening day next month, because they're going to be tough conversations this front office has to figure out with placement, with everything. Who wins the competition and who impresses them and their eyes, because they are the ones making the ultimate final decision. So, I've liked what I've seen so far in the first 2 games. I think the rust definitely has been there. Very happy to see Alex Ramirez get going early. Very happy to see Francisco Alvarez get going early. And this is something that we're going to continue to see. Francisco Alvarez has all the makings to be a 30-plus home run hitter this year. I firmly believe it. I think we're going to see more of a complete season out of Francisco Alvarez. He seems determined. He seems ready. Lindor started off hot with a single yesterday as well, smoking a ball into the outfield. So this is something where I'm feeling good about these guys coming in and being ready this early in spring training. The guys that you want to see get off to good starts, they're getting off to good starts. And that means a lot to these ball players. Make no mistake about it. To us fans, it's just like 2 games in a row spring training. I get it. But these guys, they don't want to start off with an 0-for-10 stretch. They don't want to do that. Like that'll kill someone's confidence real quick. Even these prospects that we're talking about here, these young players. So we'll see what happens. But Rob, do you got anything else for the stream here about who impressed you?
Yeah, Hayden Sanger, somebody brought it up in the chat. Catcher. He's a big boy, and he hit that opposite field home run that actually hit a lady in the leg on the berm. Yeah, she's okay. Like, she had like a big black and blue. But he's a guy that has a lot of power potential. Again, I'm not going to go crazy with him because he's not going to be a part of this team, if ever. But these are guys, again, you see guys in minor leagues who might open up eyes for other teams that become assets for the Mets in potential trades later on this season at the trade deadline or even in the offseason. That's something you have to look at as well. And to Easy's point, look, we're not overplaying, spring training games or early on in spring training that we're overvaluing or, we got to relax. Talking about Tyrone Taylor, it's nothing to be overly optimistic about. This guy's a professional ball player. He can bat .098 the rest of the spring training. I know what he can do as a major leaguer because he's been in the majors for a decent amount of time and shown that he has power. He can play all 3 outfield positions. He's a solid professional ball player, veteran ball player who knows his role, and when he gets opportunities, will do his job. Not at the caliber of a Brandon Nimmo or a Juan Soto or whoever other outfielder with a ton of all-star type caliber player. He's a solid player, and just same thing with guys like Miguel Buto or anybody else that we want to talk about. Lavender, all those guys. It's not about, look, all you can do is evaluate what you've seen so far, right? I can't project what's going to happen game 15 of spring training, right? But the fact of the matter is, this is what every guy that might make the ball club opening day has to pitch or play well offensively, defensively, and on the mound consistently throughout spring training. So you could say Lavender might have struck out 3 guys that are going to be in single A this year, but that's the only stat you have to look at him. You can't say, oh, well, he pitched well, but he only pitched against single A guys or double A guys. That's all you can evaluate on, right? I'm not talking about guys like Tyrone Taylor, who, even if he performs daily, is still going to be our 4th outfielder on opening day, regardless of what he does in the spring. You know, Luke Voit, if he bats 400, hits 10 home runs in spring training, there's going to be a lot of Met fans that say maybe he needs to be the DH, regardless of who we hit him against. The fact of the matter is you have evaluations based on what they do, regardless on who it's against, because that really doesn't matter. Not when you're in evaluation mode, not when you have spots on the roster that are open for potential guys like we talked about the bullpen, possibly a bench player or a possible DH. Because I tell you right now, if Vientos wins that third base job, Beatty's going to the minor leagues, and now you have a big open spot for that DH spot. And that's something that we're going to have to look at as well later on in spring training. But evaluation is evaluation, regardless of who it's against, right? You're going to, if Alonso hits 20 home runs in spring training, are you going to say, well, he hit him against single A guys? Nobody's going to care, right? If Bader performs, no matter what, the fact of the matter is you evaluate with the numbers you have in front of you and what you see with the naked eye. That's all you can do. That's what spring training is for. It's for guys to get ready, to get their timing right, to stretch out the pitchers. That's all it's about, working on certain pitches. That's all it's about, Chris.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. And that's a conversation that we're definitely going to have surrounding the DH as well, because I've made my opinions on X known already, and I've made my opinions on my channel in the Interstate Mets Report this past Friday. If you guys missed that, it was Interstate After Dark. Make sure you go check that on the channel. It's a great discussion with my guy Pask, and it was a great discussion in general. And we talked about Luke Voit being one of those guys that could potentially sneak his way onto this opening day roster. And I'm not going to lie to you, like, a lot of people are just writing off Luke Voit. And I'm telling you right now, with DJ Stewart having that option available, I mean, is he a lock to make this team?
No.
Having 3 lefties on the bench, because now you have Omar Narvaez, now you have Joey Wendell, now you have DJ Stewart as 3 lefties on your bench, and the only guy on your bench is a righty and Tyrone Taylor. So if they don't want to, and this is all about what the Mets prioritize at the end of the day, right? Like, if they feel comfortable going into the season with 3 lefties on their bench, they're going to do it. But if they're like, that's not too feasible, and we want that sort of split 2 and 2, then a guy like Luke Voit makes perfect sense. He just does.
Yeah.
Like, we've seen him do it at a high level before in the major leagues. And DJ Stewart, we haven't. Like, we've seen him have a great month. Like, he doesn't have sample size to go along with him, but you can mitigate everything and just send him back to AAA because he has that option. So a lot of people want to discount or discredit Luke Voit. I understand, probably not the most pleasant name to look at in terms of making the opening day roster, but he does have pop in his bat. And if that's what everybody has been missing, and that's what everyone's been saying that they've been looking for this season, I'm not saying that Luke Voit's the end-all be-all, because he's not the answer completely to that, and I don't think he's going to be playing every day as a DH. I think he's going to be a strict bench bat, but that it could be an option. So we're here to talk about the ins and outs of this roster and these competitions and these sort of decisions that this front office is going to have to make, right? Like DJ Stewart, if he goes out there and sucks in spring training, that's a guy that's not guaranteed. Like, this is why spring training games do matter, because a guy like DJ Stewart, who proved himself to be able to stay on this roster and not get tendered a contract, he proved himself that he's going to be here in spring training come 2024. But he didn't prove that he deserves an opening day roster spot in 2024. There's a difference there. And I don't think a lot of people see and recognize that difference. And that's all I'm saying. That's just my sort of devil's advocate Spark Notes version of what I want to say on that topic. But we'll talk about that more on this channel.
Yeah. And, with DJ Stewart, it's what have you done for me lately? And that's what a lot of people fall into that category as Met fans, right? We all talked about it during the offseason. How many people in the chat? Oh, DJ Stewart has to make this team. They got it. It doesn't make sense not to have him on this team. Why? Because he had a good September. You can't tell me that spring training games don't matter, but you're going to tell me late September games when your team is out of it with no pressure matters just as much as a spring training at bat. And Easy brought up about Tyrone Taylor. If he was going to hit 25 home runs, the Brewers would have never got rid of him. The reason why Tyrone Taylor was included in that deal was because Adrian Hauser had 1 year left on his deal. The Brewers don't pay nobody. That's why they traded Adrian Hauser. And Chris brought it up. Arbitration eligible Tyrone Taylor is going to cost the Brewers money. Why did the Brewers trade Corbin Burnes? Because they don't want to pay him. The Brewers make these trades for financial reasons, not because of the talent of a player. That's what you have to understand. And if you look at the trade as a whole, they took back basically a middle road prospect for Tyrone Taylor and Adrian Hauser, because financially it was going to cost them to keep those players around, at least Hauser and arbitration eligible Tyrone Taylor. That's why small market teams like the Brewers have to make those decisions financially. They didn't probably want to trade Tyrone Taylor, but Stearns knows exactly how that organization works. He probably asked for Tyrone Taylor along with Hauser because of the financial aspect of those two players. Hauser, as a back rotation guy, probably can get $10 to $50 million on the open market. The Brewers aren't paying that money. Tyrone Taylor, arbitration eligible. That's a big jump from a guy who's making league minimum to arbitration eligible. It's it might be $900,000 to $2 to $3 million for Tyrone Taylor. That's a lot of money to the Brewers, who are very financially strapped as an organization, being a small market team. That's why they traded Tyrone Taylor, not because they wanted to or the potential he has. They don't look at that. They traded Corbin Burnes. Why? Because they know they're not going to pay him in the offseason. They know they didn't want to pay that $20+ million that they had to give him in arbitration. They didn't want to do that. The Brewers made the playoffs last year. They shouldn't have traded anybody. But because financially they're strapped financially, they have to make those type of decisions, and why those trades for Burnes, Taylor, Hauser were made. You have to look at it more of the financial aspect with these teams than the potential on the field. That's why that trade happened with the Mets.
Yeah, and Game for War is saying here AAA is missing a first baseman. Luke Voit was brought in for that. And if you truly believe that there's competition at third base, like Rob was saying, the only other backup first baseman that this team has going into opening day is Mark Vientos. And if you're saying that he has a realistic shot to go play third base more often than not, then that leaves that backup first baseman role. Who's going to play first base if Pete Alonso needs a breather or what have you? I don't know. That's kind of where my mind's going at. But there's no reason to have three lefties on the bench is what I'm saying. And that's kind of my line of thinking.
With Luke Voit, because it's a minor league deal, there's probably an opt-out at a certain point with a certain amount of days in the minors. So if he don't think that he's ever going to get called up, he can back out just like he did last year when he opted out of the minor league contract and, became a free agent again to go with another team. So Luke Voit, he could be the depth piece in the minors, but if he don't feel like he's ever going to get called up, he can opt out and end up on another team where he might get a major league roster spot for another team. So he's not necessarily a depth piece that has no choice. He will have a choice to opt out of that minor league deal at some point.
Yeah. And also David Peterson was officially transferred to the 60-day IL today. Colton something, I forgot the name that the Mets picked up. Nothing to report majorly of. I should probably know this, but Colton something that was put on and it got picked up in lieu of that move by the Mets. So nothing really to report there. I believe he's a pitcher. We'll see. I gotta take a look into his stats, his metrics. I didn't do so before the stream, but that's all from us. I think that's all we got. We talked about the first two spring training games for about an hour 45 here. Like I said, we're gonna be doing these. I want to do these on my channel, the True Mets Talk podcast, Maybe every couple days, every couple spring training games, maybe we can prop up a live and just talk about the trends that we've been seeing. And I want to get people in the chat involved as well. If you subscribe to the channel, I want to hear what you guys have to say about this team and the guys that we're seeing. And I don't want to hear about your Pete Alonsos and your Francisco Lindors, because we know that they're going to show up, right?
Yeah.
We know that a guy like even Francisco Alvarez can get lumped into that category. I'm expecting him to show up in a big way. I want to hear about the guys that could have a potential impact on this team in the future and also in the short-term future. Your Luis Angel Acuñas, your Kevin Paradas, your Jet Williams. I believe Jet Williams did strike out today one time and he drew a walk, but he also stole a base. He got a massive lead off of first base when he stole that. I'm not sure if you saw it, Rob, but that was crazy what he did on that base path. But he's a
I
guy
saw
that brings a lot of speed. It was very exciting. So I want to hear about those guys, and I want to talk about those guys, especially this competition that we're going to be seeing maybe for that last bench spot, the competition for the bullpen, the competition for that last starting job in the rotation. This is something that these are valid conversations to have. And we wouldn't be up here talking about spring training if they weren't. If we just knew exactly on paper the exact 40-man or the 26-man roster that we were going to get come opening day, we wouldn't be doing this. There would be no reason to, but there are valid competitions to be talking about here. We know what the roster is going to look like for the majority of the part, but there are other holes that this team needs to make decisions on. And this is where we sort of Colton Ingram. Thank you for telling me the name, Colton Ingram. This is the sort of time that we get to see what these guys are made of. So I appreciate everyone tuning in. Rob, if you want some final words here to send us off, and I appreciate you tuning in from Port St. Lucie as well, live and in the flesh. Thank you so much. Send us up out of here with the last words, Rob.
Absolutely. And I do apologize for not a lot of content in Port St. Lucie. Again, with the terrible service, Wi-Fi, no lack of Wi-Fi or service at the stadiums, it's just hard to do content. I do have a couple of videos that I'm going to put together and put up on the channel. And, I'm glad I did this live stream. I did one earlier when I first got here. It's always fun doing it. I'm doing a Mets Spring Training Talk live tomorrow once I'm back in New York around 7, 8 o'clock. Chris, if you're available, you can pop on as well. And everybody else from the Mets Roundtable. If you guys are available, we'll set up the stream that way, but I will be doing it tomorrow. So, guys, make sure we're going to still be doing a ton of content. I always appreciate Chris for having me on. I'm glad he was able to get me on because I was bored in a hotel room doing absolutely nothing. The Wi-Fi held up, which is great. So I appreciate it. We got a month of spring training games to go, and we got a month and a few days before opening day. A couple of roster spots, a couple of competitions. It's going to be fun. It's going to give us a lot to talk about going forward. I do appreciate that, and always let's go Mets, guys.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you joining in. We'll definitely try to be on the stream tomorrow. Definitely try to talk about that. Maybe we'll have some overlapping topics, but I definitely want to get in and on, especially when we have another game under our belt. So we'll see what happens. As always, make sure you're subscribing to Rob's channel. A lot of you I know are here because of Rob as well, and I'm very appreciative of the support as well. It's been fun doing all of these live streams that we've been doing going back into the middle part of last season. Thank you all for commenting in the live chat. Make sure you're subscribing to the channel. The channel's almost at 550 subscribers. I thoroughly appreciate the support. Got a couple announcements coming up here on the channel either next week or this week coming up or the next week. We'll be selling some merch on here, a shirt too. If you guys are interested, make sure you check out the community tab. You'll get a little bit of a sneak peek of what that's going to look like, but trying to get that out there as well. So if you're interested, let me know, hit me up. There's going to be an announcement on the channel as well moving forward here as well. Like I said, stay tuned either this coming week or the week after that when I get back in town. There will be an announcement. So I appreciate all the support. Keep hitting that thumbs up. Keep subscribing to the channel if you're new here during the live, or if you're just popping in on the rerun. Make sure you're subscribing to the channel. I thoroughly appreciate it. And follow me on all my social media handles as well. A couple of banger tweets today that people on the other side of the Mets fan base that aren't too optimistic definitely had a field day with. Saints and David Stern. So that was a little fun too. But I appreciate it. This has been the spring training live stream edition of the True Mets Talk podcast. Very impressed to see some guys and Tyler McGill to open up the season. I appreciate everybody in the chat. Game for War saying LFGM. Hit that thumbs up. Like I said, if you have any friends or family that are on YouTube that need more Mets content, make sure you tell them to send them our way. Like I said, it's been the latest episode of the True Mets Talk podcast. It's your boy CP. Here's my guy Rob. We are out. Peace, and let's go Mets.
Let's go Mets.
Thank you for watching the latest episode of the CP New York Sports Pod. If you enjoyed this content, make sure you hit that thumbs up, comment your thoughts and opinions, and use the lower right-hand button of this video to subscribe to the channel. Thank you.